Replacing legends, but the roster still loaded, of course, at Clemson. Talking up Tigers with Ryan Cantor from TigerNet with the Clemson Tigers in spring camp. Ryan, how you doing tonight?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good to have you. Good to see you as always. Let's start looking at the skill position players replacing one of the most prolific rushers in the history of the ACC, right at the top of the list in regards to scoring and rushing. Travis Etienne. Most of college football familiar with Lyn-J Dixon, but he doesn't necessarily come across to me as somebody who can carry the load week in, week out.
Yeah, well, Dixon is a senior, and he only had 190 yards rushing last year, but you really have to put last year's rushing stats into perspective. Shorter season, obviously, than usual for the Tigers, but also the offensive line really struggled. His freshman and sophomore seasons, he was really great. His freshman year, he had 547 yards and averaged 8.8 yards per carry. So he had a pretty big freshman year. Sophomore year, saw a little bit more time, had 635 yards rushing. Yards per carry came to a more reasonable, but still excellent 6.1 yards per carry. Last year he struggled. He didn't take a step forward, but it's just with the weird COVID year and the struggles on the offensive line, it's just really hard to evaluate this pack of running backs. I think Dixon, who had 4.5 yards per carry, it seems like he regressed, but I'm hesitant to put too much stock into what was a weird and smaller sample last season. He should get the first opportunity to be top of the depth chart, but I don't think anyone's expecting the depth chart to play out like it did last year, in which the top running back's really a bell cow. So he enters camp as the number one, but I think number one means something very different this year than last year.
Chez Mellusi saw the field a little bit, got his taste of action, 3 touchdowns. But everybody's talking about, for one, on the negative side, DeMarcus Bowman getting away, transferring to Florida. On the positive, of course, Will Shipley coming to camp.
Yeah. I thought Mellusi looked really good. I think he could be like a 1B and maybe even move up from there. I'm excited about him. The freshman you reference, Will Shipley, he was a top running back. He gets Christian McCaffrey comps. I think it's a freshman. He'll be more of a, I don't want to pigeonhole him as a scat back, but I could see him chipping away at what the Tigers will have to do to replace all of Travis Etienne's nearly 600 receiving yards. I think Shipley could potentially get involved in that. It's tough to project anything with freshman running backs because pass protection is such a big part of who actually sees the field, and you don't really get that from high school tape. But Shipley's got a ton of upside. The other freshman that has been getting a lot of attention this as spring's rolling on is Phil Maffa from suburban Atlanta, from Loganville. Big dude, really kind of a power back. So this is a very crowded running back room. I don't know how many snaps are going to go to true freshmen with the veteran talent ahead of them, but I think people are very excited about both freshmen.
Yeah, Shipley, the second-rated player in the state of North Carolina, first-rated player as an all-purpose back in the nation. And Maffa, as you state, Shipley's a guy that, being on social media, I seem to hear about him every other day during the battle between Notre Dame and Clemson. And Maffa, a guy that the more I talk to Clemson people that followed the team, they're excited about him emerging as well, even though there wasn't as much excitement and hoopla concerning his recruitment. He's out of Georgia as the 8th-rated running back in the country, according to 247 Sports. Got Ryan Cantor on the line from TigerNet, breaking down Clemson football as we look at the wide receiver position here at the Voice of College Football. If you enjoy the content, hit the like button, hit the bell for the notifications once you've subscribed as well. That way you know when we're going live. Justin Ross is the guy, obviously, everyone's looking forward to seeing return to the football field in 2021. This is the position at Clemson, arguably the best position in college football over the last decade at wide receiver. And again, Justin Ross being the guy.
Yeah, missing Justin Ross last year, kind of an underrated negative impact to the season. It happened before the year started, so it's easy to overlook it. and just sort of move on to the receiving core that was there at the start of the year, and they had their injuries too, which we'll talk about with Ladson and Ngata being hurt. But the injury that was the biggest was Justin Ross for the entire year. It certainly reminds me of Mike Williams. Missed 2015. Tigers fell just short of the national championship. Him missing that season was part of the reason he comes back for 2016, puts the Tigers offense over the top. They win that first championship of the Sweeney era. Feels a little bit like that. Obviously, that's sort of a best case scenario there. But Ross was just spectacular. His first 2 years had over 1,800 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns. He's practicing. He's still no contact for now. But all signs seem to be go. So if he's back, that's immediately a big boon for the Tigers receiving core.
When it comes to Ngata and Ladson, what I go back to, Ryan, as soon as I hear those two players' names, I go back to watching the spring game, their freshman season, and listening to Dabo Swinney talk to ESPN concerning that he didn't know that he had ever recruited two wide receivers or many position players that were as knowledgeable about their position and understanding of the college game and as mature as those two players were coming in as freshmen. And it's got to be time for them to step up.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of these taller, highly recruited wide receivers like a T. Higgins, they're gone after 3 years. Well, these two have been here for 3 years. Both of them last year was totally marred by injuries, COVID, quarantines, and protocol, and all that. So the year was really funky for them. Again, like with many sports, when you're trying to project and look back at last year, you sort of have to take a lot of that of 2020 with a grain of salt. But yeah, I mean, it's been 3 years and they haven't. Or it's been 2 years now, and they haven't done a lot on the field. So I think it's a big year for both of them. I was really impressed with Ladson's upside. His speed and size combo, I think, gives him huge upside. But he's got to avoid drops. He had some problems with dropping sort of the easy ones and making highlight reel catches last season. But the main thing for them is just staying healthy. If they could stay healthy and Justin Ross is back and healthy, that's a heck of a trio. And then there's several other players and some big freshmen too.
Yeah, I don't want to discount what Cornell Powell contributed last year, coming out of nowhere, seemingly for a lot of people, in regards to being on campus for a long time. And then finally, as a senior, he steps up with 53 catches and 7 touchdowns. And Amari Rogers obviously caught 77 with 7 touchdowns. So how do you see their losses playing out? Obviously, Ngata and Ladson are the two main contributors to step in there.
Yeah, I mean, replacing Amari Rogers is certainly tough. And what Cornell Powell did, particularly over the second half of the season, he got a lot of talk about really stepping up sort of entering the year. And then the first about half of the year didn't do a whole lot. And it seemed all the talk seemed pretty empty. And then he just really blew up. He also had great chemistry with DJ Uiagalelei when he started those two games with Trevor Lawrence being out. So he really blew up. So yes, replacing them will be tough. But again, it goes back to health. If Justin Ross is back and healthy, that's a huge piece. That it's like getting a third year 5-star, an already experienced. So I think that does a lot of the work to replace them. And then you have Ladson, you have Ngata. Again, wild cards a bit with health. We haven't seen him healthy and on the field. So I think they could be replaced, and I think the wide receiver group can be better. You also have Ajo, who's a sophomore now. He's a Canadian from up near Calgary. Didn't do a whole lot last year, but he had I think it was against Georgia Tech, but regardless, he had like 2 catches, and one of them you just saw his athleticism. We heard about it in practice reports and whatnot, but he's a real raw athlete, and with a year of experience, maybe he's ready to break out. You have Brandon Spector, a slot receiver. They use him sometimes over EJ Williams, who I'm extremely high on because Spector was good in blocking. So you've got some depth there. I think the Tigers are very well positioned to replace the guys that are losing it in the position.
In addition to the 3 that we discussed, anybody else we should be looking for?
Yeah, one guy I'm really excited about is EJ Williams, who's a true freshman last year, so he's a rising sophomore. He got more and more snaps and looks as the year went on. Later in the year, he made a one-handed catch that just seemed identical to the Justin Ross catch in the 2018 season national championship game. And he's from Phoenix City, Alabama, same hometown as Justin Ross. So a good comp, both by coincidence and actually playing style, which is sort of funny. I'm really high on him. Then you have Brandon Spector, who's a slot receiver. He wears the number 13, the Renfro number. It's a classic number. We're still waiting for him to really make a bigger splash. He was fine last year. They used him at times when they wanted to have someone who could pass block or I guess I should say run block. But I think he has an opportunity to step up. Joe is another one. He's from up near Calgary in Canada. Didn't play a ton last year, but tons of athleticism, a lot of upside. I don't know if he's ready for that breakout season, but he's got a ton of potential in him. I think folks are very excited about him. And then just a couple freshmen coming in that I think could make an impact. Dakari Collins and Bo Collins, no relation, are big recruits. Bo is actually the former teammate of quarterback DJ Uiagalelei, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any sort of pre-worked chemistry there. And then Troy Stellato is a slot receiver, so add some depth to that position, which should be interesting. So I think with them all, you have a really talented and deep receiving room. Getting Ross back may be the biggest piece of it, but obviously they lose Amari and Cornell Powell, as you mentioned, but I think the pieces are there to replace them adequately, but also potentially be better at the position.
Bo Collins, the 12th rated wide receiver in the class of 2021, according to the 247 Sports Composite. Dakari on number 32. Spector caught 16 last year, and E.J. Williams did contribute pretty well. 24 catches, 13 yards per catch, and a couple touchdowns. Wrapping up the star-studded positions, running back and wide receiver at Clemson with Ryan Cantor from TigerNet. Ryan, we always appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, always appreciate the invite. Thank you.